committee, just kind of a heads up, as soon as we hear the bills that we have today, we've got a list of bills that we're going to try to advance today. If we do not get them all finished today, then we will be back in here tomorrow at 1:30. So just kind of a little bit of a warning. First up for hearing, we have House Bill 2279, and we will have Reviser Scott Abbott give us an overview of that bill, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, committee. House Bill 2279 is the Physical Therapy Licensure Compact, similar to the Interstate Compact that this committee heard earlier this session. This would provide an interstate compact for the interstate practice of physical therapy by physical therapists who are licensed in a compact state and allow them to practice in other compact states if they meet the requirements of the compact. So much like the psychology compact that this committee reviewed before, I will kind of gloss over a lot of the mechanics, the establishment of the commission, the rulemaking authority of the commission, because a lot of that is exactly the same and is exactly the same in structure and form as a number of other interstate compacts to which the state of Kansas is a party, including other healthcare licensure compacts, and instead focus kind of on the substance of how this applies to physical therapists. So the compact would provide the compact privilege to practice physical therapy and would require a licensee to practice physical therapy that they hold a license in their home state, that they have no encumbrance on any state license, that they are eligible for a compact privilege in a member state under the compact. They have not had any adverse action against any license or compact privilege within the previous 2 years. They must notify the commission that they are seeking compact privilege within a remote state, pay any applicable fees, including any fees imposed by the remote state, meet any requirements established by the remote state where they are seeking a compact privilege, and report to the commission any adverse action taken by any non-member state of the compact within 30 days after the adverse action is taken. The expiration date is set in accordance with the home license, and they must maintain the requirements of their license and the compact to maintain their compact privilege to practice physical therapy in a remote state. The compact provides that a licensee providing physical therapy in a remote state is subject to that state's regulatory authority, which is to say a physical therapist with a home state license in another state, if they are practicing in Kansas under compact privilege, would be subject to regulatory authority by the State Board of Healing Arts. There is provision for a remote state to remove a licensee's compact privilege in the remote state and impose fines for any violation and take other actions necessary to protect the health and safety of the compact state's citizens. There's also some language providing for consideration of adverse action taken by other compact states, including consideration by a home state, to consider and investigate adverse actions that are taken by a remote compact state. There's also language requiring when an encumbrance is on a license in the home state for that to be restored to good standing and for the licensee to again meet the requirements of compact privilege under the provisions of the compact. The compact provides that a home state has exclusive power to impose adverse action against a license issued by the home state, but the home state may take adverse action based on investigative information of a remote state, so long as the home state follows its own procedures for imposing adverse action. So again, in the context of Kansas, the State Board of Healing Arts would have to follow its own and Kansas statutory structure for investigating and taking action against a physical therapy licensee. The balance of the bill is primarily related to a lot of those mechanics of the compact commission and the rulemaking authority and the formation thereof. Near the end of the bill, beginning on page 16, there is a section that provides for that allows for the State Board of Healing Arts to require, as part of any original application or reinstatement application for a license or certificate, the Board of Healing Arts may require the person to be fingerprinted and submit to a state and national criminal history record check. This is very similar to a number of other professional regulatory bodies in the state of Kansas, the authority that they have, including authority for local and state law enforcement to assist in taking and processing the fingerprints, and for the State Board of Healing Arts to charge a fee for collecting the fingerprints and the cost of the criminal history record check. The bill would also amend two sections of the Physical Therapy Licensure Practice Act. First is requiring professional liability insurance coverage to also be maintained by each physical therapist licensed in a home state and practicing here under the Physical Therapy Licensure Compact. The other is relating to the board's authority to adopt rules and regulations for minimum education and training requirements for the practice of dry needling, to also include those physical therapists who are licensed in a home state and practicing here under the Physical Therapy Licensure Compact. The bill would take effect upon publication in the statute book. Similar to the previous compact that this committee reviewed, the compact does have provisions for when the compact became effective. I believe that was a few years ago, but it is in force and effect now, having been enacted by the requisite number of states to begin operating in those states. So for purposes of Kansas, it would begin operating on July 1 of 2021. And I would be happy to take any questions.
Are there questions of Revisor Abbott? Scott, I have one, and I think you may have touched on it, but I was looking as to what kind of impact that this legislation would have on our current PT laws. And I think you hit on a few points in there.
Yes, Madam Chair. So the direct impacts that it has on Kansas Physical Therapy Practice Act are those two provisions relating to professional liability insurance coverage, that requirement, and the dry needling requirements, primarily to make them applicable to physical therapists licensed in another state practicing in Kansas. The other is to establish kind of the blanket authority for the State Board of Healing Arts to conduct the fingerprinting and criminal background checks.
Okay, so it wouldn't have any impact with our direct access, et cetera, on PT law?
Not directly by the provisions of the bill itself, no. If there are some practical impacts that may be felt, I am unsure of that, but as far as legally, it does not change any other provisions of Kansas physical therapy.
All right, thank you. Representative Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Scott, forgive me if you did touch on this in there, but if we pass this and someone licensed in another state is practicing in Kansas under this compact, can the Board of Healing Arts revoke those privileges, or would that only be up to sort of the compact itself?
Sure. So, Representative, in the case that you outlined of a person practicing in Kansas under the compact privilege, they are subject to Kansas's regulatory authority, so they would be subject to regulation by the State Board of Healing Arts. The State Board of Healing Arts could restrict their ability to practice in the state of Kansas, and then there are provisions for what happens in other states, and I think I mentioned the allowance for their home state to also investigate that and perhaps take action. But yes, for their practice in Kansas, they would be subject to regulation and limitation by the State Board of Healing Arts.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there further questions? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, Scott. Appreciate that. Okay, first up, I have Jennifer Caswell, Kansas Chapter Legislative Chair for the American Physical Therapy Association. Welcome to committee. Oh. Yeah, there's a little light that'll come on.
Red light. Are we good?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Madam Chair and Committee, thank you so much for your time hearing us today about House Bill 2279. To date, Scott hit on a lot of the points that I was going to make. So to date, right now, we have 30 states that have passed compact language, 20 of them right now that are actually issuing compact privileges, including all the surrounding states around Kansas. So we do look forward to hopefully being one of those states in that group. We have, over the years, we brought this forth a few years ago, and then over the years, we've had discussions with a lot of the key players in this, and have had a lot of discussions the last few months with the Board of Healing Arts, the Executive Director for Kansas Board of Healing Arts, FSBPT, which is the Federation of State Boards of Physical Therapy, and our PT Advisory Council, to make sure that we were all in agreement with how we could move forward with this. And I think at the end of it, it really comes down to the couple amendments that were discussed, talking about the fingerprinting, and then just making sure that we're covering everything from the background. So that was really the big things that I wanted to mention there. And we're hearing from, I do some adjunct teaching with Rockhurst and St. Mary's, and I am in Overland Park, so I am close to the state line. And so a lot of people right now are making the decision to potentially move to Missouri and get their license in Missouri so that they can have the flexibility of the compact privilege. And I would like to see more of those people move to Kansas because this is a way we can make money and keep good clinicians here in the area. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll be open to any questions.
All right, we'll go through all the testimony, and then we'll come back to
Thank you.
questions. Thank you. Next, I have A.J. Thomas, CEO of Rooks County Health Center. Well, it's kind of nice to see live people in our committee room, so welcome to committee.
We appreciate you having us. Appreciate all of what you guys do, too. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to us. I am A.J. Thomas. Madam Chairman, thank you so much. A.J. Thomas, I am CEO of Rooks County Health Center. Like many rural Kansans, wear a lot of hats. I'm also a physical therapist. So as a physical therapist and the CEO of a hospital, I've had the opportunity of a couple of our physical therapists leaving us or going on maternity leave. We found that it was easier for me to do dual purpose as a CEO of a hospital and as a physical therapist than to try to go through the licensure. This compact would help us to ensure that I had a physical therapist friend an hour and a half north of me that would have came down from Nebraska and worked, helped me through that time, but it didn't work because it would have taken too long to get him licensure. And so we struggle to get by through that time period because we didn't have something like the compact in place. Furthermore, as a physical therapist, I also volunteer and work for the U.S. Olympic Committee in Colorado. And there's a lot of times where I'm in a gray area. And there's a gray area of going out there and working and helping our athletes and helping our Olympians. And then coming back and whether or not I'm which jurisdiction I'm fully working under. And so that's confusing at times. And working under a compact would help clarify that a lot. So thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you. Next I have, and let's see if I can keep from butchering this name, Stasia Troshinsky, Assistant Clinical Professor with KUMC, Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation Science Program. Welcome to committee. I did? Or it's just close?
I'll repeat it. I can't always hear the specifics, but Madam Chair, thank you so much today. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stasia Troshinsky Brown, and I am a professor at the University of Kansas Medical Center. So I teach our future physical therapists. And it is true, just as Ms. Caswell has mentioned earlier, our campus sits on State Line Road. And so our students sit in their classrooms, physically distanced, of course, and they can look out to Missouri and Kansas. So many of them can choose to go to Missouri, which is a compact state at this point, get their licensure there. And we know early on they like to have the flexibility of traveling or being able to move beyond states or go to one state or have different opportunities to practice in other areas. We would love for our students who are our future physical therapists to have that opportunity to stay in Kansas and practice in Kansas and make that choice. The other thing that I wanted to really highlight today is that, we are really proud as part of the University of Kansas system that we're part of an organization that has been rated a military-friendly top 10 school, and I know all of you are well aware of that. We have a commitment to serve our veterans, and our military families are really impacted by having this flexibility with the PT compact. So it can impact the flexibility that military service spouses and families have to get meaningful employment right away and not have to wait for the licensure to come through when they are moving between states. You can see that with all of the different testimony today thus far, this has been an ongoing conversation for a while. We have been in conversations with all of the different players, and we really believe we've come to a meaningful resolution with the bill in front of you. So I step down with asking for your support for HB 2279. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Committee, you will note that we have written testimony, 2 pieces of written testimony, and then we have a neutral testimony from Tucker Polling with the Board of Healing Arts. Are there questions, committee members? Representative Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I ask a question of the reviser?
Yes.
Thank you. Scott, sorry not to belabor the point on before, but I see in Tucker Polling's testimony, he suggested a technical amendment that would add the words compact privilege in regard to being able to suspend or revoke license or compact privilege. In your mind, is that necessary or is that just redundant to what we already have in there?
Representative, I think it's helpful as clarification to make clear in Kansas licensure statutes for physical therapists that that is a ground that the State Board of Healing Arts can consider in taking adverse action against a licensee. Substantively, the compact probably handles it, but in the case of something like this where you're talking about, you know, the opportunity for the board to discipline or restrict a person's license and ability to practice, I think clarity is helpful in the way that the Board of Healing Arts has suggested.
And do you have that language in front of you? Should we proceed with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So Scott, if we were to do that, where would you make that recommendation? And would you adopt all of the verbiage that Tucker used, or?
So I am pulling up his testimony now. I can tell you the way that I would recommend doing it is by amending that statute that sets out the grounds for discipline by the State Board of Healing Arts of physical therapists, and just clarifying that in addition to a license, they could also take those actions against a compact privilege. I think
So
it's similar, but like I said, I'm pulling up his testimony now
Okay,
to make sure.
tell you what, why don't you go ahead and take a look at that and kind of figure out, because you know how I am about page numbers and lines and sections
Sure.
and all that, and take a minute to look at, and we'll see if other questions are out there right now. Committee, are there further questions? Representative Berquist, did you have a question? Okay. Anyone else have a question? Boy, this is pretty easy. It's all on you, Scott. We're just going to sit here and hang out, wait on Scott. Yeah, we've got Jeopardy music going in the background right now. Representative Arnberger is prepared to tell stories.
Are they good stories?
Oh, that's a good
Madam
point.
Chair.
Representative Barker, thank you, Representative Barker. Go ahead, Scott.
Yes, reviewing Tucker's testimony, that is exactly how I would accomplish that.
All right, so where would we put that in the bill, please?
So this would be a new section that we bring into the bill. So kind of there at the end where we are already amending a couple of current statutes in the Physical Therapy Practice Act. Right there before section 3 on page 17, we would pull in that section that sets out the grounds for discipline and make those additions to that statute there.
So this would become section 3, and then we would renumber accordingly, correct?
Correct.
All right. Committee, are there any further questions? All right, seeing, huh? Yeah, this is going to cost you snacks in this committee because I don't see you on our list.
John Monroe, I'm the contract lobbyist with APTA Kansas. With our conversations with Tucker Polling, we actually I worked with Representative Berquist to draft up amendments, which also includes the language that Tucker Polling is requesting. So we do have amendments that are prepared. Emil has that language, so that I just want to let you know that we've already worked on that.
All right, thank you very much. Snacks, healthy snacks. Okay.
Chair, that's exactly how
All right, committee, are there any further questions or comments? All right, seeing none, that closes the hearing on House Bill 2279. And unless there is objection, it would be my intent at this time to work House Bill 2279. Representative Berquist.
Yes, I have. See if my light's on. Madam Chair, I have 2 amendments, and I'd like for Scott to describe those 2 to you.
Okay, was those sent to Dave Long at all, Scott?
Madam Chair, they have not been yet. I can as I am explaining them, or
Okay.
right now
So-
before if you would prefer.
Well, if you can put them up on your screen, can you do that for us?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, and then just make sure they get to Dave, and then Dave can make sure they get posted up on KLIS, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You want to go ahead and,
Okay, so this is the first amendment. This is what we were just discussing, giving the State Board of Healing Arts the authority explicitly in the Physical Therapy Practice Act to take disciplinary action against the compact privilege of a physical therapist practicing in Kansas. So as you see kind of up here in this language that sets out all the actions the board can take, in addition to action against the license or certificate, it adds or compact privilege everywhere appropriate.
let me ask a question. Okay. Representative Berquist.
I move that we consider this amendment as an amendment to this bill before we consider it for passage.
Is there a second? Second by Representative Kelly. Discussion. Okay, my question to you, Scott, is this language supposed to help with where Tucker polling was going, or is this in addition to?
Madam Chair, I think this is exactly how Tucker envisioned accomplishing his suggested goals.
So we would not necessarily come in with a new section above
Well,
3.
that's what this does. So if you look here, this direction right here, the page 17, line 6, we would add this whole section to amend it to make those additions.
All right, thank you. Further questions, discussions? Representative Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you asked the question because I was looking at 9 and whether we're creating a new section. We are creating a new section 3. So if you scroll down, we would have it in section 4. Would that be correct? Because we would renumber 3, which is presently, or we're including everything in 3. Oh, sorry, Scott. I had my back to you. I was trying to look at the screen. So there will be a new
You
section.
can look at him right over here, too.
Yeah, I can't see that far. So you're creating a new section 3. So the old section 3 would now be section 4, and then section 4 would be section 5, or did you put it all into 3?
No, so I guess I should clarify. This isn't creating a new section. This is amending an additional section of law, of current law. But yes, this would become section 3. We try to put statutes in order in bills. So this is where section 3 is where this statute would fall numerically. And then everything that exists in the bill after that point would just be moved down and renumbered.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate that clarification. Further questions or comments? Because we're going to do this, just this amendment right here. Questions or comments on the amendment? Representative Berquist, you may close.
I move my motion.
You've heard the motion by Representative Berquist, seconded by Representative Kelly. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion carries. Representative Berquist.
And as to the second amendment, I would defer to Scott to describe that as well. And I move that we consider this amendment.
Is there a second? Second by Representative Barker. Discussion? Is he bringing that up? Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair, I have it on the screen now, and I'm happy to explain if you would like.
If you would, please.
Okay, so this amendment relates to the fingerprinting portions of the bill. This was the section kind of near the end of the bill that I was describing earlier. So that section, for whatever reason, was originally made a part of the compact so that it would only apply to compact privilege rather than to all persons applying for licensure or reinstatement as a physical therapist. So this amendment would do two things. First, it would clarify that this fingerprinting and criminal history record check could be conducted for any Kansas license or compact privilege in Kansas. And then, so that's this language here on the screen now to kind of add the compact privilege language to the existing provision for Kansas licenses. And then the second is kind of a technical conforming thing where the fingerprinting section would be made a part of the existing Physical Therapy Practice Act rather than a part of the compact specifically.
I write slow.
And that's in line 6 on page 17.
And then on page 16, we're on,
This is line 25, kind of after the description of Kansas licenses, where we're inserting the description of the compact privilege.
all right, thank you. Questions or comments on the amendment? Seeing none, Representative Berquist, you may close.
I move my amendment.
You've all heard the motion by Representative Berquist, seconded by Representative Kelly to amend. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Motion carries. Back on the bill as amended. Any further questions or comments on the bill? Representative Berquist?
I move that we pass the bill out favorably for passage
As amended.
as amended.
Seconded by Representative Parker. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. All right, committee, let's turn our attention to House Bill 2373, and we will now open the hearing on House Bill 2373. Revisor Abbott, if you will please explain.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 2373 is an act that would create provisions for the Kansas Department for Aging and Disability Services to establish and implement mobile crisis services and a program for those services for individuals with intellectual or developmental disability in the state of Kansas. The bill would require KDADs to establish and implement the program with a number of stated objectives on page 1 of the bill for mobilizing the individual's own strengths, using community resources, improving their ability to function and live life, preventing unnecessary or inappropriate placement in institutions, safeguarding their rights, preventing injury, recognizing and preserving the rights of self-determination, autonomy, and self-care, and providing services in the least restrictive environment feasible. A lot of this language kind of mirrors language in the Developmental Disabilities Reform Act that is current law in the state of Kansas to meet those same kind of goals and objectives. The bill provides that this mobile crisis services program shall have adequate resources for direct services, training, data management, coordination, telehealth, and consultation necessary to intervene in each crisis, and also establishes ways that the program may respond to those crises, including providing assessment, consultation, and other support services for individuals with intellectual or developmental disability, ensuring access to mental health support systems, and identifying appropriate professional services for those individuals in crisis. The bill also requires KDADs and service providers within that crisis program network to kind of collaborate and share and provide information as it relates to consultation and training on crisis prevention and intervention and respite services in this context. Including aggregate data from the CanCare MCOs and demographics of individuals with intellectual or developmental disability who are seeking or accessing crisis services. The bill would require KDADs to adopt rules and regulations necessary to implement the Mobile Crisis Services Program not later than July 1 of 2022. And similar to other bills that kind of address the Developmental Disability Reform Act would require, to the extent possible, the agency to prioritize contracts with service providers who are described to procure services under the Developmental Disabilities Reform Act to provide the mobile crisis services contemplated by this bill. The bill has that cutoff for KDADs to adopt rules and regulations of July 1 of 22, but the bill itself would take effect July 1 of this year. And I'd be happy to answer questions on this bill.
All right, questions of Revisor Abbott? All right, seeing none. First I have up is Lori Feldkamp, President and CEO of Big Lakes Developmental Center.
Yes, Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Welcome
Thank
to
you.
committee.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today in support of House Bill 2373, which is to set up mobile crisis centers for mobile crisis services for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I had the opportunity to testify in front of you last year about this time. It was an informational hearing regarding the crisis services that are going on or lack thereof in the IDD system. I shared with you at that time the story of two individuals that were in our services. One was a success story and one was not a success story so much, but I thought that I would spend just a few minutes updating you, if you remember me being here, about my story about Jason. Jason came to us in 2015 and he was placed in our services with 2-on-1 staff supervision during waking hours. He was just 18 years old and he came to us with a long history of police reports for violence, aggression, and property damage, and including assaults on his family members and exposing himself to younger females on school bus. 4 years ago, while visiting his family, he sexually assaulted his 3-year-old niece. And at that time, we had, of course, police involvement in that, and his family relationships have been severely strained as a result. He continued to show a lot of anger. We tried to intervene and provide him support with our local mental health services, as well as any other services we could get through our MCOs and so forth. A year ago, I shared the story about how he got so angry because he thought that the garbage truck driver was driving too fast, and he basically challenged him to a fight there in the front yard. He became so angry that he started throwing things. He challenged him to fight. He throws rocks and so forth. Well, about a week after I testified in front of you, we had another incident occur. It was pretty severe, in which he threw rocks at passing vehicles, and he also threw rocks through the window where our staff were at to try and get away from him, and came very close to hitting our staff and threatened to kill them. We had police involvement again with this, and at this time they took him to jail, and that is where he is at the present time. I am convinced if we could have mobile crisis services in place that would help us to support him, he would not be in this position. He is in jail and he's awaiting placement at Parsons State Hospital, but they do not have any bed openings at this point in time. But KDADS is also in support of these needed services for him in Parsons. What I want this bill to do is to prevent this kind of thing from happening in the future. I think if we have the resources and the expertise that is shared with service providers that are working with individuals like this, and I also want to emphasize that this is a very, very small percentage of the individuals that we serve that we have these issues with. But by concentrating our resources and getting training and having a mobile crisis intervention unit available to help prevent hospitalization or incarceration, any number of those kinds of options which are not optimal for anyone, including the people that we serve. I think this would go a long way in getting us started down that road. I would stand for any questions when you're ready to do that. And I thank you again for the opportunity to come and talk to you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lori. Next, I have Colin Mckinney, CEO of Starkey, Inc.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm speaking in support of 2373 today. And as Lori mentioned, we did have quite a hearing last year. Greatly appreciate your efforts, Madam Chair, and those of the committee members to allow us all that time to talk about the specific stories and challenges that we face, the injuries and the property destruction and all of those things. And the fact that we laid that groundwork a year ago causes me to think that maybe we don't have to retread that ground. I think those stories will probably stick in everyone's mind for a good long time. What we're excited about with this bill is that hopefully after all these years, we're finally getting to a place where rather than hashing and rehashing the challenges that we face, we're getting to a place where we can start moving some steps forward to better serve these individuals. One of the things that I like to point out is that, as Lori mentioned, it is a very small percentage of the population that we serve, but they consume a very disproportionate share of our resources, particularly staffing resources. And so if we are having to staff someone 2 staff to 1 individual or one-on-one at a time when we're already in a staffing crisis, we can't find enough people to fill all the vacancies that we have. The outcome of that is that people who want to accomplish their goals, which may include employment or living more independently, they don't get as much staff time. When we have to make decisions about health and safety and doing the best we can to serve those who might harm others, that's where our staffing resources are going to go first. And so this bill kind of imposes an expectation that there will be a support network beyond providers like my organization or Lori's organization or numerous others around the state. It's going to enlist the assistance of the state and other key service networks, including mental health, to be there hopefully before a crisis situation happens. You know, so often, as you just look at the title of this bill and the first couple of lines of it, it looks like what we're talking about is a mobile response band with some capable people in it that are going to show up when bad things happen. As you get deeper into the bill, you realize what we're really talking about here is a more proactive approach to try and stave off these types of crisis situations, some of the ones that Lori just described. Revisor Abbott talked about some of the key things that the bill would bring to the table, and we're excited if we can just move this forward a little bit after all these years. I'm relatively new. I've only been at this a little over 20 years. But I can tell you, trying to meet the crisis needs of people who consume such a disproportionate share of the time and attention that we have to give has been a constant discussion during that period in time. I've lost track of the number of efforts and initiatives that we've had, the number of wonderful stakeholder reports that have been generated. We finally come to you. It was unfortunate that last year's legislative session was cut short. I'm very pleased that we're able to come before you with some action steps that we can put in place. A timeline horizon through June of next year to try and implement what should this look like and start moving forward. I'll be honest, this is not going to solve the entire issue, but it'll feel so good to have some resources and some forward progress. And maybe we'll be able to come back to you in a year or two and talk about the great accomplishments that we've made and how much better job we can do of not only meeting the needs of these individuals, but of everyone else as well, because we won't have to be borrowing the staffing resources that belong to everybody just to give to a few. So as you can tell, this is something I'm passionate about. I could go on and on, but I won't do that to you. I'll be happy to stand for questions when the time is right.
Thank you very much, Colin. Next, I have Kendra Creer, Director of Regional Services, OCCK.
Hello, Madam Chair. Did I butcher your last name? You got it right the first time.
Okay.
Hello, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Kendra Creer, and I'm here today to talk to you about serving people in rural communities who struggle with complex needs. I've been at OCCK for 14 years, and I'm the Director of Regional Services in North Central Kansas. Who is OCCK? OCCK provides services in a 9-county area of North Central Kansas to 3,500 people per year and employs about 300 staff. Our services are designed to help people live independently in their communities. OCCK serves anyone with any type of short-term and long-term disability. We serve people of all ages from birth to end of life. 43% of the people we serve with intellectual disabilities also have a mental health disability. And today I would like to talk to you about serving people with complex needs and give you a brief update on the gentleman that I talked about last year. OCCK strives to put together an array of supports that people need to be successful at home and in their jobs. Last year, I talked to you about a 48-year-old gentleman who lived in Southeast Kansas. His disabilities included brain injury, severe diabetes, physical disability, multiple mental health diagnoses, and a history of physical aggression. He moved to Concordia in December of 2019. In the first year, we assisted him through 6 emergency room visits where he had mental health screenings with each visit and was turned away. 16 emergency telemedicine calls with the psychiatrist that constantly adjusted his medications. Belongings in his apartment were destroyed from anger and no sleep. The first week he struggled, people spent days and nights working with him. We pulled together a team of people that specialize in crisis situations. The OCCK team consisted of direct support professionals, a nurse, a licensed master social worker for therapy, psychiatrists, and independent living specialist, who all spent hours each day supporting him and helping navigate the different avenues to keep him in his home. Everyone was able to help him avoid getting sent off and admitted into an institution. I'm so proud to tell you his team has supported him in his home. His medications have been regulated. He is happy, healthy, and doing awesome. Then in July of 2020, we received a call from a care coordinator with a 20-year-old man with autism, and he was in a severe crisis. He was living in a home in north central Kansas with dirt floors, no running water, and minimal food. He was unable to communicate any of his wants or needs and was ripped from his home and living with his para from school. While in the home, he was subjected to drugs, alcohol, physical abuse, and inconsistent medications. We were able to meet with the young man and his para, pull our team of specialists in, and transition him into services in less than 48 hours. He came with a blanket and a pair of headphones and a few clothes. In the 7 months he has been here, he has learned how to communicate with an iPad. He is up to saying 25 to 30 words, has learned how to make simple meals, has met with doctors to regulate his medications, attended therapy with sand, music, and art, and he is finally in control of his life. Then, a most recent, last night, I was called out for a crisis. I worked until 2 a.m., working with the person, the hospital, law enforcement, social workers. This picked back up at 6 a.m., so I'm running on little sleep. But we're still working today to work through this crisis situation. We are asking you to support teams of people like we have at OCCK. OCCK has worked hard to be a leader in rural areas to meet people's needs in the community. We work in a community model where we go and meet the person's needs in their homes during a crisis by pulling an array of services together to support people. We are boots on the ground running to support people and collaborating to layer on different supports with community partners such as the MCOs, Central Kansas Mental Health Center, Pawnee Mental Health, and other mental health centers, local hospitals, and law enforcement. OCCK will continue to utilize verbal and nonverbal strategies to help keep people and others as safe as possible in crisis situations by applying grounding techniques for remaining calm during an emotionally charged intervention or conversation, such as communicating empathy, validation, and concern, as well as assessing a person's well-being and need for further support. We are asking for you to for your support to be able to continue to coordinate specialized teams to provide needed services in rural communities. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Kendra. Next, I have Shelley May, Deputy Director of the Johnson County Developmental Support. Welcome to committee. Okay, she's coming on. All right. That's fine. Sometimes we have to pause for our technology that we have out there with certain people, so. No, he's trying to get her on out here. Nick?
So Shelley told me that her audio wasn't working. Yeah, okay, I will talk.
Okay, let's give her a moment. You know, while we're waiting here, let's go ahead and committee if there's questions for any of the conferees that we've already heard from. Representative Barker.
I'm going to direct my question to Collins, I think. Colin? Is he up?
I'm back.
Oh, good. And I agree with you. When I read the caption, I thought you were talking about a van. I thought possibly they had a motor home or something with red lights and sirens heading to Colby, Kansas for an emergency.
Exactly.
But apparently that's not it. Have you coordinated at all with the Department of Aging and Disability? Because I find they're the responsible agency for this, and they're not here. And the cost of this is going to be $3 to $5 million, and I'd like to know if it's in their existing budget, or do they want to ask for additional funds? And without that, you know, so have you coordinated, Collins, with the Department of Aging and Disability
Actually,
about this bill?
I need to defer to Nick or Matt Fletcher from Interhab. They're the ones who have had that direct communication, I believe.
That'd be fine.
Nick, would you like to step up to the mic, tell us who you are, and then...
So the ADRCs, they're not the case management entity for IDD. IDD, that would be the Community Developmental Disability Organizations. And they're essentially just a case management entity, so they help with eligibility and assessments and that sort of thing. They would typically provide or assist in some of the coordination and training that this bill would require. You know, these bills or these types of models have gotten more and more popular. There's this exact model in states like Oklahoma, Colorado, Iowa, Texas, so a lot of the bigger states. But it's a sort of an endorsed model to fix this technical problem between the idea that mental health services are rehabilitative in nature, whereas most people with IDD and long-term services receive services that are habilitative. So this is a sort of a technical fix that provides the training and coordination and ensures that people will have access to crisis services as they exist in our state plan, but there's always been this policy problem at the federal level.
The reason I ask you, Madam Chair, if I may, it says the Kansas Department of Aging and Disabilities shall establish and implement a mobile crisis service program for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities with the following objectives. So they're the lead agency.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. I thought you were talking about ADRCs, but you're talking about KDADs, yeah.
KDADs.
Yeah.
They're the ones that, and they're not here to testify to whether they want this or they don't want it. and I guess my question is, have you coordinated with them to see if they're in support of it? Because it's going to cost $3 to $5 million with one FTE, and the agency who would possibly get the money is not here today.
Yeah, so we have had fairly lengthy conversations with them about these issues. I do feel like they're in support. It was not included in the governor's budget. But this is something I think that they understand has been an issue for a long time. And I think, actually the first time we talked to, or it's been a couple of years ago now, but Secretary Howard about it, she referenced the same report from 2002 that Colin referenced, because we've all been working on this issue for that long.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Nick, you might just stay up there just a minute, and if you'll put down Representative Reese on there. In the 988 suicide hotline, there is mobile crisis in that. So my question to you is, could this all be maybe put in with that there, so then there'd be the possibility of reducing that fiscal note with other funds besides SGF?
Oh, I see what you mean. So it would be typical in some of these states for there to be one line to call. I think Washington State has a model that gets touted a lot, and that's just, you just have one number
No, I'm looking
statewide.
for I'm talking about the crisis teams that you're trying to structure in here.
Yes,
The mobile crisis teams, not a phone number.
right.
The mobile, I'm looking at the funding in the 988. It doesn't
Yeah.
have anything that doesn't have anything. It's the mobile crisis.
So the funding, some of the funding would go to training and coordination and all of those kind of preventative things that we don't have funding for now. And then a good chunk of the funding would go to the actual services themselves. So.
Thank you. Representing Turner and then Representing Reese.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You kind of hit on the same question. I was going to ask about that, but I'll move to my other question, which is, since it's not, what is the nature of the intervention? Is it, I mean, for the 988, it was a phone call that initiates that. Who initiates, what is is it a physical intervention? Is it a phone call? Just those questions. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So it can be both. If someone is brand new to the system and they have a crisis somewhere, and the example that.
Dick, do you feel comfortable taking your mask off?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
I should have thought about that.
No, that's all right.
The example that we use a lot is one that I'm familiar with, and it's suppose you are supporting a person at Walmart. They're going on about their day. It's an autistic person, and they just get overwhelmed and start maybe destroying property. Normally, the store would call the police, and that person would leave in handcuffs. In this situation, supposing this is a person who's new to the system, we don't know them. A real person would go out and assist, and it's a team-based model that is sort of essential to all of the kind of crisis intervention training models that are out there. But this would provide kind of that higher level of coordination. But the idea is that if that person is known to the system, that they have a plan in place, and there's a team approach already identified. We know who's going to provide what service at what level. And it's not just all about service providers. It's about making use of what's in the community and the other supports that person has around them as well. So.
Just one follow-up. So that call that would go to the police would go to where instead?
It would go to, so if the state were to set up a centralized 800 number, they could do that. But whoever the individual is with would have the phone number. And I provided crisis services, mobile crisis services back when I worked for a mental health center, and we just made sure that all of our consumers had the number to call. So,
thank you, Madam Chairman.
All right, and I'm going to back up. I believe that we do have KDADs online. Is that correct? Andy Brown?
Yeah, Madam Chair, my name is Andy Brown. I'm the Commissioner for Behavioral Health Services at KDADs. And while the IDD programs don't typically fall under my commission's authority, we have been working jointly with Amy Penrod's commission on community-based services around this issue. And we've been looking at the Georgia model for how this has been done. And they do blend their IDD mobile crisis work with their behavioral health mobile crisis work. I think that's a very reasonable approach to take to incorporating the efforts of this bill. We do have funds that are proposed in that 988 legislation that I think could be put towards this purpose, depending on how that process goes with that bill. I do think that the fiscal note that we drew up from the agency does include a position to help with coordinating these efforts, and that we are interested in trying to blend that with our behavioral health mobile crisis, which is in the governor's budget.
So Andy, let me ask you then, would that position that you funded in there, I think it's like around 93,000, somewhere in that ballpark, would that still be needed if we tie this into the 988 finance piece?
Yeah, I believe the IDD community probably needs its own person to keep an eye on everything and make sure it's going the way it's supposed to. So I would say, yes, we want to include that position as an additional position.
Okay, so the same crisis the mobile crisis teams that we talk about in 988 would possibly be the same teams that would be sent out into this. So that's where we would reduce a good chunk, if not all of the SGF side. Would that be correct?
Correct. Yeah, I believe that if the 988 legislation passes, funds from that could be used for this purpose.
So one other question here, Andy, then is the date of the bill, because it's goes into effect of the statute. As you heard, Representative Barker talk about, is that all the rules and regs. Now, okay, let me ask, do you set up the rules and regs then? That doesn't come out of KDHE?
Correct. KDADS would rules and regs.
All right. So that has a that has a date no later than July 1, 2022. So then when would the financing need to be made available for this?
I think it would be ideal if we were able to have some of the funding in fiscal year 22, probably on the second half of fiscal year 22. But I don't think we would need the full amount until fiscal year 23.
Okay, but you wouldn't necessarily have revenue, well, you may or may not, would you halfway through have revenue then from the 988?
I don't
if
believe
it passes.
I don't believe we're anticipating having revenue for 988 until July of 22. So that'd be fiscal year 23.
Okay, so then when in 23?
I believe in July of 2023. So July 22, start of fiscal year 23.
All right. So your thoughts are that you would need about 1.5 in the 22 budget?
I believe so, yes.
And then 3 in the 23. All right, thank you. Representative Reese.
I am quite confused. I'm accustomed to, I'm not sure whether who will answer this, but it might be Nick. I'm accustomed to the mobile crisis services through the 26 community mental health centers. Are we looking at a parallel system?
Well, so most of the evidence-based practices have been developed for this are around kind of helping with the collaboration between the systems. So there would be that level of coordination, and I think you heard some of that in Kendra Creer's testimony, and then Shelley May was definitely going to going to talk about their model.
She's still having issues with this, so that's all right.
But there can be some very distinct sort of health issues between the two populations. Typically, what you'll hear from mental health therapists, especially if someone just shows up and they're new and they're in crisis, is that they don't feel competent or confident enough to be able to plan interventions for them. So, and for a lot of these folks, it takes extensive planning to really meet their needs. You might have a few crises before you really figure out what's going on. So it's very kind of specialized expertise.
My question is more about the system versus the actual intervention. Mm-hmm. It's more of the system, because if you have a crisis, you usually call like your local community mental health center, and then that kind of sets the ball rolling. Or you show up at an ER, they call the community mental health center. So that's the kind of system that's in existence now. Is this going to be a parallel system, or is it going to be? Are the expectation going to be that they are one and the same?
So I think ideally it would be for consumers and families, it would be one system.
Okay.
So if they show up at the emergency room, they can get help from the appropriate folks.
Okay. And so I don't see anyone here from a community mental health center talking about how that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Kendra's testimony and Shelley's, they talked a little bit about the collaboration that they have with their mental health centers now. We did speak with the Association of Mental Health Centers. It would be good maybe at a future date for us to be able to share more of our work. But I think that they were, for the most part, okay with the bill language. And I think there was just one word that Kyle called out for me. But they understand this has been a problem for a long time. It also helps them. You know, if a person who's severely autistic and not very verbal and in crisis shows up at their crisis stabilization unit, they're glad to have the help typically. This would formalize the sort of the collaboration between the systems.
Representative Berquist?
My previous question was answered through 988, but I do have a question about the emergency situation that happens when a police officer shows up at a crisis, and he has to intervene at least in the mode that he has the capability to. Does this help to alleviate that on that short term, or is it all long term?
Yeah, the services would be available on the scene. That's very specific to the model. So law enforcement, any emergency services would be able to get in touch with this system as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Representative Lynn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not to belabor this too much, but so the mental health crisis team, or not the mental health, the mobile crisis team that's in 2281, which is the 988 bill, which is supposed to convene and then deploy crisis services, those would not be sufficient. And that's why you need one for this bill for the IDD population. Could we just train those in the mobile crisis teams to be able to handle crises involving the IDD population?
Well, so, you know, the model that gets used it's specific to the DD system. For some of the reasons that I can mention, that you want people who are very familiar with the different types of diagnoses and know what they're seeing and how to identify the types of issues that somebody might be having. I think that there could be a lot of cross-training, but, you know, there's a lot of needs just on the mental health side. So for a long time, we have said, you know, we understand that, you know, there's a huge need on the mental health side of things. We're not trying to decrease from that or take from that. We think that what's needed is just ensuring that those crisis services are also there for people with IDD.
If I may. So are you able to determine then, when you're getting a call, if it's going to be which mobile crisis team you need?
Yeah, that's the idea with the model. Yeah, and I may have mentioned this in my testimony, my written testimony, but there's specific programs that are endorsed by SAMHSA. One of them is called START. There's another one called NAD. And they're specifically trying to address those issues, because you're right, that's exactly what you have to have. You have to have good policies and a good program in place for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, and I think, and Andy's been kind of nodding his head on this, there, especially in you know, some of your different communities, there is a lot of cross-training with this, and this is why I'm thinking that it's kind of like we've got the 988 bill that we've heard that has so much potential for us, that had that already been in place with the funding mechanisms that it's bringing to the table, they may not have had to come in with this particular bill. So we're going to have to figure out how we create a meld between all of that. So Andy and I'll have to be putting our heads together on that. So you're on the right path. It's different, but yet it's not different. They do work together. Representative Hasswood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Nick, when you were giving the example of, you know, someone from this population who has an episode in their workplace, my mind went to law enforcement as well, and people of color who oftentimes there's an unfortunate situation where it's after the fact that something bad has happened, that it was discovered they had a disability, and why wasn't this, you know, treated more with a social worker in this capacity. And with the example, you said they were at work. Would this, is there a specific, like, does the person have to be at work to receive the services, or would it be when they might be misidentified in the streets or driving?
Yeah, no, so anywhere the person works, attends school, socializes, or lives. So it's literally anywhere. And it's for all those, again, for all those reasons that you were mentioning, that people can just present with issues that are just overwhelming to, to school staff. Police officers don't understand what's going on always. This is their lifeline to somebody who can help. And, Colin was talking about the emphasis on prevention. So anyone who's working in these crisis services, then it behooves them to train law enforcement, to train schools. So that's really, you're getting a lot of cross training that way, and you're helping to sort of get needs identified in a community before the crisis happens.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, Nick, and it might be a good idea once we get past turnaround, and if we've got time in this committee, is the presentation that you provided us, I believe it was last year, might be good, because whenever you come before us, the thing I think about is the individuals that happen to have their, I don't know if it was their case manager or whomever it was, on site when they had an episode, and the comment that stuck in my head was that law enforcement said, had that person not been available to help them bring them down, they probably would have shot them.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to prevent in this. But we have to be able to have the funding to create these crisis groups to go out immediately.
Yeah.
Because law enforcement is not social workers. We don't want them to become social workers. They can't have that kind of training. But it's not because they don't want to. It's just, but they can help with the physical restraint, and then the team can come in and help deal with the mental and whatever else that we're dealing with. Would that be okay?
Absolutely. And there is, I know we had limited number of conferees today, but there's a lot of folks out there who are interested. And so if we needed to collect personal stories, it actually wouldn't be very difficult. So.
No, I would think it would be good for us to have that presentation again, because it was quite an eye opener. And I know in a conversation that I had with Connie Hubble,
Yeah.
she had wished that she'd kind of been available that day to hear that, because it's quite compelling. I have Representative Carlson and then Representative Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is my first year on this committee, and so there's a lot of things I'm not familiar with. So I'm going to be really blunt. Sometimes it seems like we're putting money into bureaucracy more all the time, and we're getting more people in the office and doing this and doing that. And what we really need is the people that are out there in the field, like Chairman Landwehr had in a previous committee meeting, where there'd been such success at the high schools and the schools with the people that were there that could go down and quiet those people. So is that what this extra money is going to do? Is it going to be by training for the people that need to be out there to physically reach out and help these people? Because if it's just another model where we're going to have an office and a name on things, that's all. So it's like, since I'm new, that's the question that I'm asking. So thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair.
It's spot on. It's like you're living in our heads. That's exactly what.
No, don't go there.
That's what we've talked a lot about. That there's there have been other methods tried, and I think some of the other conferees got at that. That really were just about assessment and triage, and to the people on the ground, it feels like someone's just sort of parachuting in and parachuting out. This is about direct services. Helping people at the scene, and it would make a real impact on people's lives directly.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, this is actually putting people out there. The only bureaucracy piece that you're seeing is what Andy Brown is talking about, where they would need a staff person to assist, to coordinate all of this. That's the only bureaucracy piece out there. Representative Barker, and just so you know, we waited till you left the room. We brought K-Dads in, And we've kind of talked to them about your question, so you go right on ahead, Representative Barker.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry I missed that.
No, he's still here for you.
Yeah, I see him on the screen. But this is not in the governor's budget, correct? That's what I understand. Okay. And I need to mention to my good friend from up north, Representative Carlson, great question. Because that's exactly what the people get the perception is we build the bureaucracy, but we help less people. But with that, on the 388, that's will be a constant funding, anywhere from $3 to $4 million. Sorry, thank you. But that's a constant funding. This, of course, would be funded through the governor or the state budget, which comes and goes on occasion based upon the state of the. So I agree with the chair lady. You know, this may be an opportunity. We can kill two birds with one stone. I hope the Humane Society is not listening. But seriously, I mean, if you're going to have this funding that comes in from the telecommunications with a small fee on phones, then you need to get with the other folks and say, hey, because they're not real clear in their bill whether they're going to spend this money. And I had concerns about that yesterday. But if you can kind of work together, I think the chair lady's got it right on point. You know, we can do this. And whether or not the governor funds it or not, you're going to have constant funding. With that, Madam Chair, thank you. I'm out.
Well, and
Unless the Humane Society is on the line.
I think that's PETA. I don't think the Humane Society is going to bother you on that one.
Okay.
Well, it was kind of my intent that we'd be able to hear this and perhaps advance it, but it now sounds like we will be meeting tomorrow because I think that Andy and I and Nick probably have some work to maybe do on this so that we make that tie-in and that would relieve the SGF fund and we don't go into duplications. Representative Epley.
Well, this is somewhat rhetorical, but I appreciate what Representative Carlson said. Sometimes as a new person, you can kind of cut through some of the, whatever, BS that some of us have gotten married to by being here a while. And so I appreciate your comment, and I think you all are spot on. And if it would be interesting to see as we try to bring these two issues together, I guess I would ask for clarity on how many mobile units will we have, and do we know where they'll be stationed and how they'll respond? I mean, we don't have those questions answered at this point, but we're talking about $3 to $5 million worth of SGF. It sounds like, based on the note that I'm seeing, and if we could get a payer source other than SGF, I think it has a lot of resonance, at least with me. So I guess we'll see what you all can cook up and bring back to us. And I mean, I think we could maybe lean on SGF a little bit, but boy, Representative Barker knows even better than I do that these things come and go, the ups and downs of government and government funding, and we're on a fixed budget, and I know Secretary understands that, and so we just have to look at that. And I think if this 988 funding source can help us, I think that might be a win-win for both needs. Thank you.
Committee, are there further questions on the bill? Representative Reese. Is this your last one?
It's my
No,
last
I'm kidding.
one. It's not really, it's more of a comment for the work that you're going to be doing. You really need to loop in the community mental health centers because that's where the crisis mobile teams already exist. And so it would be an expansion, and the training that is going to be needed is very necessary because diagnosing two different things. So yeah, all of that training is going to be needed, extensive.
Right. Well, and if you'll notice, there is written testimony from Nick, and he's with InterHab, and then we also from Michelle Ponce, who's with the community mental health centers. And Nick can correct me if I'm wrong, but they work hand in hand and very well together because they have to, because it's a fine line between the IDD and then just our mental health, but it's all tied together because the IDD, it's not always just the physical, it's also the mental health side of it. So, all right, any further questions on this? All right, this closes the hearing on House Bill 2373. And Andy, I hope that you will be available after this meeting, as will Nick, so that we can have this discussion, because I would like to work this bill tomorrow. All right, committee, if you'll look at House Bill 20, that is all the hearings that we have on our bills for this week. For the new people, turnaround is Friday, or the start of turnaround for us is Friday, because every bill that I have in this committee that is not exempt has to be out, or it waits until next year. So we have heard all the bills that we're going to hear this year at this time from House bills. We will start on Senate bills the next time we're on the floor, which will be after next week. So I'm going to work currently House Bill 2209, which was the psych compact, and I'm going to ask Whitney Dameron, if you wouldn't mind stepping up here just a moment, please. And I appreciate you being available to us on this. (2209). Whitney, I think that there was some discussions perhaps with your folks and with David Fye, with the BSRB, that there might need to be some adjustments. But if I understand it correctly, David would like to have the opportunity to be able to take that back to his board that will be meeting in March. Is that correct?
Let me clarify. Okay, so Whitney Dameron on behalf of the Kansas Psychological Association, since our hearing on the bill, which was February 11th, I believe, we've continued to have a dialogue with BSRB Executive Director David Fye. I think he has a better understanding of the bill. I know he's communicated that back to the board. My conversation with the director has been, look, we want to work with you. We think this is important. He said, well, my hands are kind of tied because the board has made a decision that they would like to defer the bill. However, there's a board meeting on March 8th, 8th or 9th, but right after turnaround. And I said, we would be willing and interested to address the board at that time and provide additional information if this legislation moves forward. I've indicated to the director a couple of other things. First of all, as I mentioned to the committee when we had a hearing, if it is a serious challenge for implementation, don't believe it would be, but given what other states have done, but we'd be willing to consider an enactment date of January 1, 2022, instead of July 1 of this year. That said, even if the bill is adopted this year, the state has up to 90 days to appoint essentially their designee to the PSYPACT board, which would be the director or the director's designee. So you're looking at an enactment in Kansas really of October 1, the way the bill is currently drafted. So I've indicated we want to work with them, make sure everyone's comfortable with the direction we're going.
Okay, let me ask you, is this bill duplicated over in the Senate?
No.
Okay.
We did not do that.
So it could leave our chamber, and there'd be ample time then for your folks and the BSRB to have conversation and then changes made on the Senate side before it advanced.
Absolutely, we're committed to that. I know that the director had made reference in his testimony that they wanted to see about a Kansas-specific PSYPACT bill. And so part of our discussion with the director has been, this is model legislation. So this really, just like this bill is drafted, is on the books in 15 other states. It's under consideration in another 14, including Kansas, plus DC. And the reviser for this committee took the model legislation and essentially recrafted into Kansas statutory framework. But those are the kinds of changes that have occurred. Anything substantive does require approval of PSYPACT to make sure it doesn't deviate from kind of what the Model Act is, because the idea is everyone in all states is working under the same kind of platform. We've indicated to the director as well, if there are specific amendments, we would be happy to work back with PSYPACT and see if they comport with the language in the Act, and if changes can be made in the bill, we'd certainly be willing to do that.
Thank you, that's what I needed. Committee, are there further questions on this bill? Okay, and I appreciate, I think the fact that we're getting a commitment that you'll continue to work with the BSRB and be able to handle any of their questions before the Senate was to pass it on their floor would be worthy of us to advance the bill. Representative Epley. You don't want to do it? Representative Arnberger. Oh, wait, Representative Barker has a question. One moment.
I have a question. By their recommendation, we're going to change the effective date. Would we need to do that? Would we need to do that with an amendment first before you work the bill? And if so,
Are you wanting that changed now, Whitney, or are you wanting to wait until the Senate has an opportunity to? And you can just use that mic right there if you want to, Whitney.
I think our preference would be to move forward as drafted. We would make that accommodation to the BSRB if we get to the Senate and they ask for that.
And the date that you had suggested that could be would be what now?
The date would move to January 1, 2022, which if that occurred, they would then have another 90 days to appoint a director, which means we could even review something in the 2022 legislature.
Okay. But if this committee felt more comfortable advancing it with that date, you'd still be okay with that because you can still readjust everything over into the Senate?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Representative Barker?
then I would make that motion to amend to the January 2022.
All right.
Second.
Motion by Representative Barker, seconded by Representative Epley to amend to a January 1, 2022 date. Discussions or comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. Motion carries. No, I'm not talking to you now. Representative Arnberger.
Okay.
No, did you have a question? Okay, Representative Arnberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am honored to be able to pass this bill out as amended, House Bill 2209 as amended, favorably for passage.
Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Epley. Discussions or comments, committee? All right, seeing none, it is recommended that House Bill 2209 be passed favorably as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Motion carries. Hey, we're doing good work here. I'm excited. I'm killing. Yeah, he's got all the bill briefs to do. I don't. The next bill committee that I'm going to look at is House Bill 2259. Questions, comments, committee? Like it, don't like it, want to advance it, not advance it? Representative Parker.
Madam Chair, I would move that we pass House Bill 2259 favorable for passage.
Motion made by Representative Parker, seconded by Representative Epley to advance House Bill 2259 favorable for passage. Is there questions or comments?
Madam Chair.
Representative Berquist.
Would you remind me of the substance of the bill?
This is relating to the treatment of sexually transmitted diseases and permitting the use of expedited partner therapy for the treatment. And I believe that was probably the bill that you weren't here for. So,
Okay. I listened to some of it online.
yeah. All right, thank you. Further questions, comments? Representative Epley.
Madam Chair, there was some question about minors being treated, and has that been resolved through the language of the bill? I mean, has that been discussed adequately?
Scott, were you able to take a look at that? Because I know that was brought up in the hearing. I believe that was Representative Lynn, wasn't it?
Yes, Madam Chair, I've had a chance to look into it some. The provisions for parental consent of medical treatment of a minor generally are not prescribed by statute. Those are a matter of a minor's capacity to consent more generally than medical procedures, and would also be handled through the kind of licensure and regulation of the professionals that are providing the services. Statute does contemplate medical procedures on children in some capacity. Specifically, there are provisions in either the sync code or somewhere else in the minors chapter of the Kansas statutes that makes provisions for children who are 16 or 17 years of old and whose parents are not available to give consent, that the 16 or 17-year-old minor could give consent on their own behalf. Beyond that, like I said, this issue is not directly addressed in statute and kind of falls back on generally the legal concept of a minor having capacity to consent.
Representative Barker.
Thank you, Scott. Just one question. Under Chapter 38, which is the sync code, you're correct. It is 16, I believe. But is it possible to pull that language or use that if we wanted to put something in this bill, or would it have to be, because it's 16 in the sync code? And, you guys do that magic thing up there where you pull it out and do different things. I just wondered if that's is how you would do that. Or would you look somewhere else?
So Representative,
Go ahead.
I think the provision, so it's not actually in the sync code itself. It is in 38, the general provisions of Chapter 38. I think you could either handle it by repeating that language in this bill, or we could simply reference that section, because I think that section is pretty broad, and actually it speaks to notwithstanding any other provision of law, a minor 16 years of age or over, where no parent or guardian is immediately available, may give consent. So I think that section is kind of self-executing whether we refer to it or not. So it would be up to your wisdom as to whether you wanted to repeat that language kind of verbatim in this bill, or to simply reference that section as, clarification in this bill.
Madam Chair, I'll leave it to your discretion, but it is in the sync code under Chapter 38. I would have no problems if pulling that language out. I would feel more comfortable. But I'll look to Representative Lynn, who raised the question, if she would, the 16-year-old.
She's going to defer to you, Representative Barker. Would you like to make that amendment? Representative Lynn.
I'm just curious. I'm guessing the 16-year-old would be the partner in this case, and I'm wondering how that would even be enforced, given that it's anonymous. Although I like it to be more protected for a minor.
I would think if they reported that they had a partner that was 16, that may be an issue. But you're correct. They may not say with the age of the partner, but it may give more comfort to the medical provider saying, well, I don't know the person, never saw the person, but I was told they're over 16.
I would agree with that.
Then I'll let you off the amendment, if that's what you...
Representative Barker, I'll defer to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Then, Madam Chair, I would ask Scott to use that language to indicate that a 16-year-old or older could make their own decision as to the...
You good with that, Scott?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would take a language straight from that section and insert it into this bill.
All right. Motion made by Representative Barker. Is there a second? Second by Representative Epley. Discussions or comments? Representative Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Scott, I'm going to put you on the spot again. I apologize for making you repeat this. Now that we have an official motion, can you just clarify? It would be that a partner 16 years and older would be eligible for this, but not below 16. Am I understanding that correctly?
So again, this approach would not say anything explicit about a minor under the age of 16. That would kind of fall back to the default relationship between a child and their parent or guardian, and the minor's, ability or lack of ability to consent generally. But if you inserted language like this, I would interpret that to exclude those under the age of 16, yes.
So I guess maybe another way of putting it, a 16 or 17-year-old could consent to accept the prescription, whereas under 16 would, if we're using this language, presumably need parental sign-off?
That's how I would interpret making this amendment.
No,
yes.
and I apologize for making you repeat that, but I just wanted to make sure I'm clear on what we're voting on. I'm supportive of that. Thank you.
Are there further questions or comments on the amendment? All right, seeing none. All those in favor of the amendment to amend by Representative Barker, seconded by Representative Eppley, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Oh, I'm sorry. All right, motion carries. I apologize. I had your name down. It's his fault. He didn't flag me. All right. I believe that Representative Bergquist has a question.
Yes, and it's, this is part of my being gone yesterday. My question is, what does this do to protect, what does this do to protect a minor child of a parent who's sexually abused them and is using them as a partner therapy to hide their problems?
I don't think it does any.
And I'm saying that it can the partner, because if the partner therapy is provided and they can provide it to their partner, could they give it to their minor child, and would that help to block the knowledge of what's going on? And I'm not asking that to you, Scott. I'm asking it to everybody, I guess.
Yeah, and that Representative Eppley might have a question. I guess I don't. If it's a parent, and the parent can give consent to, for their minor to take a medication, there's nothing that we can do to stop that.
And that's the base question, is that within this partner therapy thing, we don't have to identify who the partner is. That I have a partner and I need to provide this for them, and then thereby just hiding things. I'm just thinking. Thank you.
No, I understand. Representative Ellis.
I have two quick questions. How many partners? Up to how many people?
How many would you like?
None, really. But how many? 15, 20, 25, 30?
I don't know how you would control that count, because they could go from one to another to.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay. Last one, is it for chlamydia only, that one disease, or is it multiplicities of diseases?
Representative Eppley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my understanding through KDH&E and their testimony, this is for chlamydia only.
Thank you.
Scott.
Madam Chair, can I address the other concern raised about?
Yeah, just one moment here. Scott, into Representative Ellis's question, is this bill tight enough that it will only pertain to that, or does this allow flexibility in the future for some other STD to be included because the department decided so?
Madam Chair, it would be open for KDHE to expand to other diseases that the department deemed appropriate for the use of expedited partner therapy. The bill defines STD as those that are defined by rules and regulations of KDHE and designated as appropriate for expedited partner therapy by rules and regulations. So KDHE would have that kind of leeway going forward.
So if you want to, if Representative Ellis, if your intent is and your concern is that it stays with the current one being addressed, then we'd have to tighten that language. Representative Eppley.
Well, I'm not sure how germane it is, but you brought up the question of how many people it could apply to. This has been done unofficially for decades by providers. And, my personal record's 4, if that's of any help to you. But usually I think it's, like 1 or 2. So for expedited partner therapy unofficially. And as far as your concern that you raised about a parent in an abusive situation, I mean, that would be going on anyway. So this would really not address that as far as cover up or anything. Maybe I'm not following that. I don't think it's an unintended bad consequence of the bill. I can understand how you would think that, but in the current status quo, we don't know anyway either sometimes. So I'm not sure that it's a significant drawback to this bill.
Madam Chair.
Representative Berquist.
Just a simple response to that, and is that I understand that medication could at least be an improvement towards anybody's situation, and I understand that. And so it doesn't apply to the root problem. I just is that a concern. Thank you.
Representative Bishop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't see the word chlamydia in the bill. I read it as sexually transmitted diseases, so STDs in general. And there are different types of medication for different STDs. So I just think that's an important characteristic of the bill that we need to be aware of. It does, I am in favor of it, and I think it sounds like a good bill, but I wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Representative Ellis.
This would be directed to Dr. Epley. Chlamydia would be a simple antibiotic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, normally doxycycline or azithromycin are the two antibiotics used. KDH&E, Phil Griffith recommended or stated azithromycin, but tetracycline is also used.
And that's fairly well safe.
They're both innocuous. You never have, I've never seen adverse reactions from those antibiotics.
Thank you. My concern is the same one that this representative mentions, that, yeah, if it's just only one antibiotic safe, that makes a difference. But the multiplicities of the diseases would be a problem for me. Thank you.
Well, and I guess the question arises too then, Representative Epley, is, how do you deal with the potential of, allergies of the partner?
As you read the bill, and I've read the bill, it doesn't address allergies for the partner. That's something that the provider would have to discuss with the person receiving the partner therapy prescription. But that's part of it, so.
Representative Parker.
My apologies to the vice chair. I think we're turning you into our newest conferee on this, but I'm going to continue the process. It's hard being the only doctor in the House. To me, the fact that this does not specifically specify a single disease makes it a better bill because we are able to address more. Do you have concerns if it's open-ended, or do you share that opinion that leaving it open to address more than one STI would be a positive thing?
Madam Chair, thank you. Just as you said, I think it leaves the possibility in the future, if there are other STDs that become more prevalent in our culture, that this would allow KDH&E to rule out, to roll out other treatments for those STDs. Right now, according to their testimony, it's chlamydia is their only concern. So, and I honestly think into the future, but anyway, I think it's just chlamydia at this point.
Are there further questions, discussions, or amendments? Representative Bishop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the idea is to lessen the incidence of STDs in our society and to lessen the pain and illness that causes, and the fact that sometimes it can lead to other things and detrimental to a person's health. So I'm not bothered at all by the fact that it referenced STDs. I think that makes it a stronger bill.
Questions? Anyone else? I entertain a motion. Representative Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move that we pass House Bill 2259 out favorably as amended.
Seconded by Representative Epley. Questions, comments? Seeing none, All those in favor of advancing House Bill 2259 as amended by Representative, or favorable, motion made by Representative Parker, seconded by Representative Epley. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Did you want to be recorded? Okay. Dave, record Representative Berquist and Representative Ellis and Representative Blex, and then you can text me if you didn't get all of that. Anyone else wish to be recorded on their vote? All right, seeing none, the motion passes. Oh. All right, committee, because we are short on time, we'll see what we can do with House Bill 2280. And I think, Scott, did we amend that when we worked it, or do you have an amendment now from Alexandra? Or did we already amend that? We haven't amended
Madam
it.
Chair, the committee has not taken any action on the bill
All
itself,
right.
so no amendments have been proposed or adopted to this point.
Okay, committee, now let me make notes here before I get too far down the line here. All right, committee, we're not going to have time to work the other bills that we have before us. Currently, I have House Bill 2280 that will work tomorrow, House Bill 2281 tomorrow, House Bill 2373 tomorrow. And for those of you that are interested in the APRN bill, a decision on that will not be made until later on this week. I have actually asked the parties to go to the table and see if there's differences that they can take and work out, which I think makes a lot more sense for the professionals to do it. And for those committee members that were here when we did the corporate practice of medicine, that's what we did. And I think that we've worked out a really good, or they worked out a really good bill because they were the experts, and we have not had any problems with that bill because of that. So at this time, committee, we are adjourned until 1:30 tomorrow.